Hey everybody, how's it going? I just wanted to take some time. This is going to be a little bit different kind of video. Um, Probably once a month now, I'll have one video that's more unedited, just me talking to the camera, and one that is a lot more thoroughly edited and clickbaity, if you want it to sound like that. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, but something that is more visually appealing, I guess, to a wider audience. But I just wanted to get on here today and kind of talk about something that has been on my mind after the sermon today that I heard. I'm recording this on a Sunday, and of you know April, whatever, right before Easter, weekend before Easter, and the pastor that of the church that we just joined mentioned a lot about the cross this morning in his sermon. He's been going over a series talking about the three most important days in Christian history, human history, if you will, as well. Uh, and that's a true statement, right? And we were talking about the cross today and the crucifixion, and it came right after we went and watched the new movie, The King of Kings, which I would highly recommend, especially if you have children. We don't have children, but it really was impactful for us looking into that season of wanting to have children. And so, anyways, long story short, hearing about the cross from a sermon perspective after watching it in a movie unfold was really, really neat to see. You kind of saw more perspective of the cross. And what the pastor talked about today that stood out the most to me was the difference between how we see a cross now and how it was seen back in the time that Jesus actually died on a cross. So, for the last several, you know, 500 years maybe in human history, maybe more, it's really been prominent for the cross to be associated with Christianity and what Christ did for us on the cross and how he substituted his death for ours so that we didn't have to pay the penalty for sin. Right? Those are all things that are very true and all things that we're thankful for as Christians. But whenever Christ died on the cross was not something that was looked on in a positive light. Today, even non Christian people will wear crosses just as a symbol of sorts, of peace and of goodwill, which I don't necessarily agree with, but it is what it is. I can't stop them. And so in Christendom, that's the same thing, right? It's a symbol of, hey, this is who we are. People will wear it. People will hang crosses in their house and just kind of give that general spirit of goodwill out to people who come and visit or people that see them out in the community with crosses on their jewelry. And they identify with Christ in that way. Well, whenever Jesus died, the people who associated with crosses were criminals. They were people who had committed very heinous crimes, and they were just filthy humans that have done tremendously wrong things in most cases. For example, Barabbas was the man who should have died on the cross instead of Jesus, right? If God didn't have a plan to send Jesus to the cross. That was the person that the Jews had called out for the Roman government to release to them instead of Jesus. And that man was a thief. Some people speculated that he probably had murdered or maimed people in his efforts to steal. He was a very brutal man. He was described as a barbarian. And that's the kind of person who would be associated with a cross. It was something that was very painful. It was something that was very afflicting. It was something that was very not enjoyable, right? It had nothing to do with what we see a cross as today. And that just really stuck out to me, because we do get in that sense now as Christians where crosses just become the norm, like it's almost weird when you don't see somebody wearing a cross necklace, at church or something like that, or if you go somewhere and like a lot of the doctor's offices around where I live will have crosses in them because a lot of them are faith-based medical centers, and you really just take them for granted, right? Because they're just there. They're just wall decorations in those cases, but really, the cross is the changing point in human history. The cross is where we go from a clouded hope. In the Old Testament, they knew they had faith in God, but there was a strong cloud around the full salvation that was going to come in the Messiah that was prophesied about in the Old Testament. To now we see the fulfillment of those prophecies on the cross. Now we see that Messiah who's come to die for us, and we see the man who's suffered, the man of sorrows that's going to come and to face all this pain and agony for our behalf, which is what Jesus did. And so I think that one of the lessons that I learned today, and something I'm going to try to carry with me, especially this week as we lead up into Easter, is to kind of dwell on those things, right? To not take for granted the cross, and when we see it out there and we see it in our community, and just to remember that it's not just there as set dressing, and it's not just there as goodwill necessarily, but it's there for me to have a relationship with God. That's why the cross is there. And this may not be very helpful to anybody else, but just reflecting on those thoughts were pretty beneficial to me. Also, as a side note, since I mentioned it earlier, the King of Kings movie, it was really good. It was very focused on the faith aspect, which there's nothing wrong with that, because of course Christianity is completely based on faith, right? But what I mean by that is, up until towards the end, there wasn't a lot of mention of the sin aspect of why Jesus had to come and why Jesus had to die, but in the end they got there and they brought that around. And if you're not familiar with the King of Kings, it's the story of I think it's Charles Dickens is his name, telling the story of Jesus to his son. So it's a movie about someone telling a story. And so he talks to his son about how Jesus had to die because of Adam and Eve eating of the fruit and things like that. So it really did hit all the points that I was excited to see in a movie like that. I'm excited to have that resource whenever that time comes, when I have kids of my own, or cousins or whatever, or just people that I'm mentoring, young men or whatever, and sending them that movie, or sending them to watch that movie, or taking them to watch that movie so that they can get that perspective. And something we talked about in our Sunday school class as a comparison is, I think the movie's called The Passion of the Christ. It's a live action retelling of Jesus' story, and it can be quite gory and brutal. And I think there's a place for that for sure. I actually think I will probably go and watch that movie sometime soon, in the spirit of making note of the cross and trying to make remembrance of that in this season. And I think that certain people can handle it. You got to definitely gauge where your kids are at, but I think the King of Kings is a non-gory version that can help get the point across. Not to get into too many spoilers, but there is a line in there where it would lead you to believe that the son, that is the main character across from the dad, of course, is and Jesus asked Jesus to save him. He asked for salvation in the movie, and that was really heartfelt for me. And so I think it kind of gives that full picture of a gospel conversation with your kids, and I think it would be good. Yeah, I was pumped about the movie for sure. And it was great to go with friends, and we were able to talk about it after, and it really opened up a lot more gospel-centered, God-centered conversations with friends that we knew were Christians, but that just wasn't something that was on the front of our mind. But when we were able to have that open dialogue after watching a movie like that, it really just it really enhances your friendships with those people. So I would encourage you to go watch it, check it out, or at least to read up on it. It may not be your thing, but just read up on it, see if you think it'd be something for you. But don't forget about the cross for sure in this season. But like I said, hopefully this video was worth something to somebody. uh, Next video we have will be on the compassion of Christ. So kind of similar, but from a story earlier in Luke, not at the end of Luke. So hope to see you all there, and peace out. Thanks. Like and subscribe.